everyone, welcome back to the NRG Championship Series in Indianapolis. We are heading towards the top 8 of our 10K Showdown in this Team Trios event. The players are getting ready. We are getting the announcement prepped. We have all of that coming to you soon. But rather than leave you hanging, Devin and I wanted to hang out with you for a bit. So welcome back, Devin. We've had a great day of Magic ahead of us, and we've got a great evening of Magic in front of us. But before then, we've got we're gonna hang out. So what have you been up to in Magic lately?
Well, I've been playing a lot of standard in preparation for the RC in Dallas. A lot of Pioneer with the RCQ season, being the Pioneer format. So a lot of those two formats. But the one format that I have not touched on a little bit I haven't checked on it a little bit is Modern.
Mhm.
But that's partly due to the fact that we have quite a big shakeup coming in not too soon here, and that is the Modern Horizons 3 set that's coming out.
That's right.
So we wanted to kind of come back here and talk to you guys and maybe do a little preview discussion of the official spoilers that have been released so far. And I gotta say, Corbin, the set from what I've seen so far, the set looks like an absolute banger, and I think it definitely is going to shake the landscape of Modern.
Well, yeah, kind of regardless of how you feel about the first two Modern Horizon sets, you can certainly say they were impactful of Modern. And that's what we're going to get with this one, too. The Eldrazi push is very fun. The Flare cycle is very interesting. There's a lot going on here, not the least of which is snow covered lands and other lands that are cool, including snow covered wastes. So there's definitely a lot going on. And if you think about Modern Horizons 1, well, it gave us Hogak, but if you don't think about that, it gave us some interesting cards. Think about Modern Horizons 2. Of course, it gave us the elementals that have turned out to be really defining pillars of the format. So I'm not sure, if we see anything yet in Modern Horizons 3 that lives up to that billing, but there's definitely some interesting cards.
Yeah, the first one that I kind of wanted to put up on the screen here, and one is that's actually not a new card; it's a reprint
Mhm.
from one of the commander sets, and that is Kappa Cannoneer. And now I will say that there have been a lot of affinity deck lists as of late, mostly due to or not experimental synthesizer, the simulacrum synthesizer, which
Mhm.
is the artifact from the big score that lets you make construct tokens when you play artifacts that cost 3 or more mana value, or whenever they enter the battlefield, rather. And Kappa Cannoneer checks that box. It is a 6 mana card,
Yeah.
but you're not really casting it for 6 mana. You're going to be casting this for 1 mana a lot of the time, and 1 mana for effectively what is a 5/5 because it triggers off of itself. So 1 mana for a 5/5 unblockable ward 4. That's a lot of stats, and I really do think that this is going to give a huge boost to these affinity decks that have already kind of started to crush the modern format.
Well, yeah, you think back to the beginnings of Modern, like literally the very beginnings of it, Affinity has always been a deck. And forever it was. And now it's not basically until these more recent iterations of these blue white type decks, these cards that have brought it back, and it's felt like it's very close now for a while. And yeah, Kappa Cannoneer could be the one that pushes it across the edge. Um, I want to talk about a card that is a throwback because, of course, one of the neat parts about these Modern Horizon sets is that they feel a little time spirally in that way, and that there's a lot of references to old Magic cards and things that were good. For instance, White of the Reliquary is a black green zombie knight reminiscent of Knight of the Reliquary, which was a staple of many competitive formats for a long time. It was good in Modern. It was very good in Standard. Heck, it was good in Legacy for a long time. It has sadly no longer is a thing, but here we go. White of the Reliquary, you sacrifice a creature, search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. By the way, it also gets bigger for every creature card in your graveyard and has vigilance. So 2 mana, attack, sacrifice another creature, go get a Dark Depths in Legacy. Go get whatever you want in Modern. And I certainly hope that there are really interesting ways to utilize this in Modern. But I just love the card. I love the art being a throwback to the Knight, and I love the ideas that I've got churning with this one.
Yeah, Urza Saga too, another
Yeah.
beautiful land to go grab off of this card. It works very well with lands that make tokens like Colony Garden, things of that nature, because you can use the token to then sacrifice to get something else, and really let you kind of chain off a little bit. Looks like the players are just about starting to sit down, so maybe we have a little bit of time to discuss one more card really
Yeah.
quickly here. The another card that I think is going to be have quite a bit of an impact is Ugin's Labyrinth. This is kind of the new the been a lot of talk
Yes.
about this one, but this is the new soul land where if you have a it's imprint when it enters the battlefield, if you have a seven mana colorless card, tongue twister. I don't know why, but you get to exile it, and then if a card is exiled with it, you can make two colorless instead of one, and you can use it to return the card for later use. So very powerful with expensive Eldrazi spells like Ulamogs and Allah's Dusts, and you got to do a little bit of work to get an Ancient Tomb, but nonetheless, it is at the end of the day, no matter how much work you have to do for it, it is still a land that taps for two, which can do a lot of stuff.
Chalice of the Void is back on the menu.
Oh yeah.
That's what I see from this, right? The idea of Eldrazi Stompy as it exists in Legacy, where you have soul lands to play Chalice on one, which stops a lot of the format, and then you play your Eldrazi after. I don't know if we're exactly going to have that in Modern, but Chalice for one on turn one, that is a real thing that some decks can play towards now.
Yeah, and I mean it was a thing when Simeon Spirit was still in the format, so we'll have to see kind of how
Hmm.
that plays out. So, as we mentioned, the players are just about ready and sitting down. So, what I wanted to do is maybe we can take a look at the top 8 bracket to see what teams made it in, what teams missed the bubble. So, on the top left hand side of your screen, we have the team of Fote, Bellamy, and Baggett versus Williams, McKnight, and Moon. We have Pio, Bakuber, and Canfer against Tajali, Brickman, and Yeo. And then on the right hand side, we have Crate, Grenke, and Hoos versus Higgins, Dickerson, and Torres. And then we have Belfato, Branham, Devardy against Dunn, Bader, and Aldrich. The matchup that we are going to be starting with, I believe, is let me just get this right. The top right, it's the Crate, Grenke, Hoos versus Higgins, Dickerson, and Torres.
Hmm.
And we're going to be starting in the modern C Corbin, and there's a deck that you had that you have some interest in. Talk to me about this modern match we're about to see.
Yeah, very much. So, Calibrated Blast. It's a magic card. It's a very good magic card. It's a very fun magic card. It's the kind of fun that you can have in Modern, where you just cast it and you reveal until you get a card that can deal a bunch of damage straight to your opponent's face, and that's all it does. You just do that over and over. It's really fun. Look at that. Yeah, reveal cards from the top of your library. You hit a non-land. When you reveal a non-land, it deals that much damage to any target. Usually you're dealing 14, 15 to your opponent's face. And if they've dealt themselves any damage, that just ends the game. And if they haven't, well, your card has flashback and you get them that way. I saw this deck do very well at a charity tournament earlier this year. I then picked it up for the Miko Masters. I had some fun with it. It's been a really enjoyable one, and now here it is in the top 8 of the Team Trios event at the NRG Championship Series in Indianapolis, and this is going to be a blast to watch in action.
I see what you did there. The the matchup on the other side of the other side of the bracket, the modern player is Esper Reanimator. That is what's going to be playing against the Calibrated Blast deck. This is your normal Reanimator stuff: Atraxas, couple Gristlebrands, utilizing Goryo's Vengeance, Ephemerate to blink the Atraxas, Teferi Time Ravelers, Grief Solitude to pair with the Ephemerates as well, some
Mhm.
discard outlets. So this is kind of the I guess the stock Esper Reanimator, as it were. But this should be a pretty interesting matchup. We'll have to see if I think this is going to come down to whether or not the Calibrated Blast player can like. There's for
Mhm.
what it is, there's not a lot of interaction, right? You're not
Right.
interacting with the graveyard a ton, so it's really just going to be whether or not the Reanimator player can have a fast enough draw, maybe a Grief along the way to help take a Calibrated Blast. Um, I, I feel like this is maybe not the best matchup for Blast, but what do you think about that?
Well, there's some interesting lands we'll get to perhaps in the sideboard too. That there's a lot. I'm not going to say interplay or God forbid agency, but there's a little more to the deck than you might think at first glance, mainly in the mana base. We'll see if any of that comes up in specific situations. But the attraction, the reanimator deck, right? This is itself was new-ish to modern, but basically this is kind of the last remaining instant speed broken spell allowed in the format, right? With Goryo's Vengeance, is kind of how that works. And Goryo's Vengeance has been around in very reanimating various targets for a very long time in modern. But this deck, I think specifically, is good because of how much interplay it has with its own cards, how it can play at very instant speed, and how Ephemerate interacts with everything the deck does. It really is what ties together, and the Goryo's Vengeance Delayed Sacrifice trigger working with Ephemerate is what ties together the black white Ephemerate shells that people have been trying to work ever since Modern Horizons 2.
Yeah, like you mentioned, this is a really good example. This Esper Reanimator deck is a good example of utilizing the kind of grief, I guess, grief scam. Can we say the word scam on this broadcast? I think we can. The grief scam
Yeah,
openings where you're not pairing it with not dead after all, which is usually what you would see in the Rakdos decks, but instead you're pairing it with Ephemerate. And turns out that Ephemerate is really good with Goryo's Vengeance because normally the Goryo's Vengeance would you would lose the creature at the end of the turn, but if you Goryo's Vengeance and Atraxa and then Ephemerate it, you no longer have to lose it at the end
that's
step.
right.
It just stays in the battlefield. So it's a really good kind of marriage of the early power of grief and utilizing ephemerate to take advantage of the evoke, but also pairing that with the Gorgios package. So a really phenomenal deck list here, and one that has been putting up quite a bit of results in modern as of late. Calibrated Blast, on the other hand, is a deck that I haven't seen in a while, and I have seen I watched you play it on the Miko Masters, and I watched a little bit. I know Spike was big on this deck for a little bit, and this is one that I guess there are some new. Now that I actually I didn't
Yeah,
think about this. There
there's
are
a little
some new
bit.
lands. There's
It's
some
a
new
little bit
lands
of
that we're
tech.
playing. Yeah, we actually have Jagged Barrens. This is a new OTJ card where it's just a desert ETB tap for a black or a red, and you ping your opponent for one. And now they've been playing a sun scorched desert in the past as ways to
Right.
get in, like you mentioned. Calibrated Blast deals 15, but you can't always get that last 5 points of damage in. So having
Mhm.
ways to do that in your mana base, pretty cool.
Yeah, they're really randomly a huge upgrade to this deck, right? But that's what makes I'd say modern great, but honestly that's what makes Magic great, right? Is that something as innocuous as this, some weird limited fodder comes into play not just in constructed, but in modern in the top 8 of a NRG showdown for $10,000 with everything on the line for this. That's when Sun Scorched Deserts and everything, all these interactions they come into play. That's amazing. That's I think why we all kind of why many of us love this game, and we're going to get to see it in action here with both sides playing really cool modern decks.
Yeah, 4 Mishra's Factory, 4 Radiant Fountain, also present in the mana base, 4 Raminap Ruins. There's a Hidden Volcano too. That's the Discover one,
Yeah,
right?
you
This
can
one.
discover to get another blast.
Yeah, and just 5 mana sack it, get a blast. So a lot of cool stuff going on with this blast deck, and we will have to see. It looks like the players have. I'm looking at opening hands, so looks like
And we
okay. We're
might be
getting word
ready.
from our production. It says they're waiting on the judges, so might be just a little bit longer, not too much longer here, but yeah. Calibrated Blast versus Esper Reanimator. As far as the if we got a little bit of time, we can talk about what the other matchups are.
Yes.
Pioneer, we have Azorius Control against the Mono Black Waste Knot deck. And then in standard, we have Gruul aggro against Simic Cookies. So that Gruul versus Simic matchup, I'm looking forward to that one.
I and we think that look, full disclosure here, we hope to get to show you some of these calibrated blast games and then get over to the other games in the match because the blast games might go pretty quick, especially when Reanimator's on the other side with a pretty fast in game of its own. So we could see some fun here. And look, blue white versus mono black. Take me back to 1993. That sounds amazing. Let's go. Like this is going to be a great series of matches here to start off the quarterfinals of our top 8. So the players are nearly ready. What about standard though? What were we going to see there, Devin?
Gruul aggro and Simic Cookies. So the Simic deck, this is a deck list that has been popularized by Twitch streamer Ash Lizzle. I know she's been putting in a lot of work on this deck, and recently had a top 8 of the Canadian Regional Championship. So had a pretty good weekend last weekend. And the Gruul aggro deck, this is kind of one that's been popularized with the printing of Slick Shot Show Off. I know we've mentioned that card a few times today,
Yeah.
and that card's just making it a splash basically everywhere. So yeah, very excited to see that matchup as well. The Azorius versus. Oh, here we go. We are ready to go down. It looks like I'm getting word from our production. So let's take you down to the match. And we see players here. It looks like AJ on the right has potentially kept the hand. Not sure exactly how many cards. And Joshua just trying to find that calibrated blast.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it pretty straightforward, right? For both players, you know what each other are trying to do. You know exactly how they're going to do it or not. So we'll see how it goes here. So dice roll might be pretty relevant in this one. Of course, in this case, that is determined by the seed, which it looks like probably favors AJ on Reanimator here. But mulligans continue for Joshua Dickerson. Of course, with the mulligan rules of if you're looking at 7 and then keeping the ones you want, well, all you really need are lands and calibrated blasts in this deck. So mulligans, I think, pretty effectively.
Yeah, this is, I mean, we're talking about, what, 4 or 5, 6 years at this point, but the London Mulligan was such a huge boon for these sort of, I don't want to call them all in because they're, I guess linear is maybe the right word, but these
Right.
linear decks that are just trying to set up like, very specific combinations. Like you think Tron is trying to set up, A plus B plus C.
Mhm.
You think Dredge, where it's trying to set up lands plus the Cathartic Reunion or something like this. And I feel like the London Mulligan, is that oh my God, Corbin, is that a Mulligan to 2?
Well, I said you need lands and calibrated blast, and I guess instead we got land and calibrated blast.
That's good enough, right?
Yeah, well, land off the top. You just need a few more.
Yeah, you get the jagged barons in there to start the 1 point, and then the fetch 2, that's gonna put AG down to 18. So
What
you
a
figure
story if he gets it
maybe
right.
I can you imagine game 1 of the top 8
Yeah.
mulligan to 2 and just turn 3s them? God.
What's the best you've ever done on winning on a mulligan in a tournament?
I've
I
won
got
on
one on 3
4.
one. I got 1 to 3 on one time
I
playing
feel
the
like
combo deck.
I feel like I maybe have 1 on 3 from Tron.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay, so I guess does this count? If I mulligan to 1 and I revealed Leyline of the Void and my opponent conceded, does that
Oh,
count?
that counts. That
Okay.
counts. That's a
All
game
right.
win. Yeah, that counts. I've certainly lost to Tron on 3. I know that.
We get a Rakdos Carnarium picking up the Barons, get a little more damage off of that next turn. It's an Atraxa in the graveyard, Corbin.
All
I
right.
don't
Well,
love.
this is a pretty good start if you're AJ. Does he have the reanimation spell? And if
Yeah, he
so,
does.
well, there you go. Goryo's Vengeance. That brings back Atraxa. Atraxa trigger, and that is suspiciously a white mana open for that ephemerate. Well, what's crazy, the calibrated blast hand here was actually going to do it, right? I mean, it has
Yeah.
lands now, has blast, but might just be a little too slow for this wildly powerful Atraxa ephemerate plan.
Yeah, what's crazy about the Goryo's deck too is you mentioned that they're, the white mana representing Ephemerate. Even if you don't have the Ephemerate, you're so likely to hit it off of the Atraxa, right? You're looking
Exactly.
at
Yeah.
10 cards where it's like you just jam, even if you don't have it, it doesn't matter. And then worst case scenario, okay, I didn't hit the Ephemerate. Well, I'm still gonna attack you for 7, gain 7, and draw 5 cards. Like, is that even that bad of a situation?
Seems amazing because yeah, if you think about it, by the time you've done it, you've seen 10 cards of your deck, and then you're going to see another 10. So you're getting through a third of your deck at that point. The odds are certainly in your favor. Um, but
Well, yeah, anyways. So
at it anyway. There you go. Ephemerate on Atraxa. We'll do this again. Why don't we?
all right, 10 more. And I think the big issue here is lifelink, right? So we saw it
Yes.
gain 7. The 7 is going to put AG to 25. Even in the best case scenario, Josh goes untap land, blast you for 15. That puts AJ down to, I believe, 10. And then
Right.
the Atrax is going to put AJ to 17, which means even if he top decks another blast, it still only would put AG to 2.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one wrinkle into that.
Okay.
Blast deals damage to any target, and
You could kill
AJ's
the
tapped
Atraxa.
out. And AJ
Yeah.
is tapped out. So now that seems like probably doesn't matter. But that is like if you're Josh, I guess the plan would be to do that. But because you're right, that math otherwise does not work out in his favor, even in maybe the most optimistic of scenarios.
Yeah, I couldn't quite get a good look at the second Atrax. I don't remember if Agorios was revealed. Because yeah, now you're in the spot for Joshua. It's like you cast the blast. That's not bad, but it's where do you even go from there? Do you target the Atraxa? Do you
Right.
just go upstairs? We're gonna see Ephemerate's gonna come off of rebound here. Let's see. Are we going to choose to cast it? I actually kind of like that from AJ. AJ's like, okay, well, I already
Yeah.
have a trillion cards in hand. I just want this life.
Yeah, just in the game. In the
Yeah.
game, it ends a game in two swings, and the lifelink is in fact relevant. So, so too is perhaps any of the cards in AJ's hand. So, all right, here we go. Calibrated blast
So,
target,
anyways, I started blasting.
and we're off to the races. One blast in. it's We got a reader, of course,
Oh, we're reading.
because why wouldn't you? As a matter of fact, fun fact, calibrated blast can be Tishana's Tidebinder because it creates a delayed trigger that goes on the stat. So
Oh, I
fun
have to
fact.
reveal.
In this case, it doesn't matter. We're scooping them up and heading on to game two. Just as
Yeah.
fast. It looks like Mason took down game one over Mario and the standard. So Cookie's falling to aggro. And that sends us over to Pioneer, where, as expected, Hunter Crate on Azorius Control is locked deep into a game with Aaron Higgins on Mono Black Waste Knot.
Yeah, this matchup is so weird because both decks have a lot of, I guess, quote unquote dead cards. They have a lot of spot removal, right? Like you have
Right.
Aaron has the fatal pushes and things like that. And then on Hunter side of things, you have, Sunfalls and all these spot removal spells. So both players have a relatively good amount of dead cards. I would prefer to be on the waste not side of things in this matchup, and the reason for that is a couple of things. So one,
Hmm.
there's a lot more utility lands, right? For a mono black deck, you are able to squeeze in more utility lands like Hive of the Eye Tyrant, Gyre Reach Sanitarium, Field of Ruin, all these different types of things that can actually utilize your mana, and then just like the plethora of discard spells. Alongside Waste Not, but it looks like there are two active planeswalkers here for Hunter, so not doing too bad against this Waste Not.
Yeah, and one of them being Narset as well, of course, having honestly one of the the most frustrating passives to play against in the game where you can't draw more than one card a turn. Well, Waste Not helps jog Shakar's, Mage's Mind Tome helps jog Shakar's. Can't do those things against that Narset just sitting there at one counter taunting.
Yeah, it's like a situation where you want to use the Gyre Reach because you want Hunter to discard cards to trigger your Waste Not. But
Hmm.
if you do that, like if you're utilizing the Gyre Reach, then you can't draw cards with the Maze Mind Tome against the Narset, even if you do both on your opponent's turn, because you're activating the Gyre Reach on their turn, and then you also can't do the Maze Mind Tome, but you can't do
Right.
it on your turn because you've already drawn a card for turn. So this Narset is, now that you mention it, it's throwing a wrench in a lot of Aaron's plans.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and it looks like a Waste Not in hand and another possibly another Maze Mind Tome in hand. So yeah, Aaron in a difficult spot here. That said, a removal spell, something to get rid of the
Oh
Narset
boy.
starts to unlock the card advantage. But what is that? Is that a
That's a
shark?
shark typhoon.
Shark Typhoon, baby. All right.
And I'm gonna be real with you. This mono black deck does not have a way to kill enchantments, as you could probably imagine. Now, I will say sometimes these mono black decks do play Invoke Despair. Unfortunately for Aaron, zero copies in the deck list today.
Yeah, this is a tough spot to navigate out of. Looks like we might have the. This is the part of the game where when you're playing against the blue white control deck, you know that you're at a very low percentage chance to win, but you've got to try, especially if you're Aaron Higgins and your team has already found itself down two games in this top eight matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, if we see okay. It looks like we are, yeah, I think this game is going not so great for Aaron. So if we can switch it over to standard, we can take a look and see exactly what is going on between Mason and Mario. Players are
Yeah,
shuffling up as you mentioned. So yeah, I
this
mean
one
that
might
game
go much
was
faster.
yeah, that game was still going on. I think Aaron was very, very likely to lose that game just because of the hard gas shark typhoon. But here we see Gruul taking game one over Simic Cookies, which, to be honest, kind of makes sense. I think that the Simic deck, while it can apply some amount of aggression, it's not really going to be able to provide as much aggression as a deck that has Slick Shot, Show Off, and a bunch of pump spells.
Mhm.
And the big issue is the Simic, as you can imagine, when you're playing blue and green, your removal options are extremely limited. You don't really get to play the cut downs and the torch the towers and anything like that. Go for the throats. Your removal is basically only in the form of, I'm going to check the deck list here, two copies of Kite Sail Larcenist, and realistically, there's three hard hitting questions, so I guess that can help as well.
Yeah, and also one of the things I think is interesting here with the girl deck is we were talking to people earlier about how Slickshot Show Off can just change the way people build the deck too, and make it have more protection, have a sort of a slightly different way of playing the game, which could also come up very interesting here because the Simic Cookies deck, as you see, I think that's Tough Cookie, yeah,
Tough
music
cookie.
resolving here. Uh, it has a very different game plan than most blue green decks you would see, that's for sure. So this is I think a very interesting matchup to play out. But having this here and having the food even, Could be relevant over the long game. We didn't see how the first game played out, but this is one of the more fascinating matchups I think you can see in standard.
Mason has just played the best land in the entire standard format, which is Thran Portal.
It's- it
It
is
is
certainly
confirmed
a
the best.
land in the standard format.
It is one of the lands, yes.
Yeah.
Play with fire, taking out tough cookie. Now, a lot of people who are maybe not familiar with standard are maybe not. They don't really, if they haven't seen this cookie stack before, they might, say what's going on here. As we see Zoetic Glyph, that's
Oh
what's going
yeah.
on here. That
Oh
is
yeah.
the Ensoul artifact at home. But it's really just trying to utilize these sort of I'm not kinda trying to say that these, like, puny creatures because they
Mhm.
are they are still pretty tough to
Tough
they do hit
cookie.
pretty
Yeah.
hard. Yeah, tough cookie. But they're, like, small and they utilize artifact synergies. So you have Teething Wormlet, which gets pumped by when you play additional artifacts, and then you have the card you see on your screen, Zoetic Glyph, which is, effectively a 3 mana and soul artifact, turns it into a 5/4. So these, ways to utilize artifacts and ways to utilize Agatha's Soul Cauldron with some different activated abilities as well. So, really kind of just trying to take advantage of some artifact synergies and, play to the battlefield. And honestly, Zoetic Glyph is maybe one of the best cards in the deck, just because,
Yes,
even when it
because of
dies, you just
this.
get an extra card. Yeah.
Yeah, because of this right here. I mean, that's maybe not the one you want per se if that's a Tidebinder, but it is a free card. I mean, it's a 3/2 that you got out of your Ensoul artifact being killed. Like this was an amazing turn of events for the Simic Cookies deck, all things considered.
Yeah. And
And
that's,
that's the power of that card, right? That it's wild because if you get rid of it, which you need to do because it's a 5, it turns it into a 5/4. I mean, heck, it's like you want pacifism at that point. So you don't have it. So instead you attack. If you're Mason, you just turn your creature sideways and we're off to the races. That said, Mario seems to be in the lead right now on taps, looks at a hand of lands and plenty of options for spells.
Yeah, Mario's weirdly kind of turned. Mario is sort of the more aggressive deck in this matchup, which is not something that you would expect to see when you see like Simic versus Gruul kind of thing,
Right.
just in terms of the names of the decks. And got a couple options here. We can hold up a Deshana's Tidebinder. We can deploy a Surge Engine. Looks like a hard hitting question as well, and a Kite Sail Larcenist to be able to take care of. We're going to hold up the Tidebinder, which I kind of like. Just
Yeah.
don't play into any of the red removal and kind of make Mason make the first move.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a play, and it's all because of that the Zoetic giving the extra spell, which gave the Tidebinder, which allowed you to speed to
Oh,
3 and keep it in your
oh,
favor. But look at that.
Corbin, Corbin, we talked about this in the interim.
Whiteboarded.
Oh boy, there is one copy of Giant Growth in Mason's deck list, and I am very very happy that it is now revealed to both players.
It is. It is a whiteboarded giant growth, and that's incredible. I don't know if we'll see it get played, but it's here and it's made an appearance as the creatures attack. Fun deck. Love it. Love it
I,
when giant growth is good, when shock is good.
hmm.
Like how fun is that?
I was gonna say if Mason doesn't cast the Giant Growth, I'm gonna give him an unsporting conduct.
And there it
But
is.
there it is, cast on the stack, bang.
All right, Mario coming in here. Looks like we're going to Tidebinder, probably the prowess trigger on the Swift Spear. And before we get to blocks with the growth on, so look at all the camera time it's getting too.
Yeah, this Tidebinder is actually kind of brutal. Okay, we have a shock
Oh,
for it. I
there
was
we
gonna
go.
say if we didn't have shock for it, then the Swiss Spear would have remained a 1/2, and they could have just ate it up with the Tidebinder. But
Yeah,
fortunately for Mason, and that Giant Growth is still gonna resolve. So a big attack here, I believe. Looks like it
one, two,
should
three,
be 7, I
8.
think.
I think it's 8 because there's another trigger from the Play with Fire.
Well, remember one of the
Oh,
triggers got countered from the Tidebinder.
oh, yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. So yeah, 7. Okay, so 11-10 as it stands here. That was a pretty good turn, all things considered, for Mason, but Mario's still very much in the game here. Looks like Kitesail Larson is to try to fight back.
We got a good old fashioned race on our hands. Yeah, Larcenous, kind of a card that you don't see too often, but it's a 2/3 flyer, and I believe it has word 1. And when it enters the battlefield, you can choose, I believe, a permanent you control and a non-land permanent your opponent controls, and you can turn
Hmm.
them both into treasures.
Hmm.
So we're going to take that Kumano and just make it a treasure. Then we have, I believe, hard hitting questions going to take care
Hard
of the
hitting
Swiss Spear.
question.
So
Huge.
really, really good turn here from Arya.
Yeah, that hard hitting question was huge. I mean, just two, like you're able to add to your board while removing two threats from your opponents. very, very good. And the attack now putting Mason down to 7 life. Hard hitting question, you can see there's just a 1 mana spell that's going to be able to just take away most of your opponent's stuff because your creatures have decent power and toughness, like we said. And there's a lot of small creatures running around when the matchups where you want hard hitting questions. So Mason down on life, down on the board. Only 2 cards in Mario's hand, and we know that neither of them are going to do anything immediately, right? You can't play anything, so the way is clear for Mason to try to catch up on the field right now. And if you can kill the Larcenist, you'll unlock 1 creature of your own.
Yeah, I believe looking at Mason's hand, I think I saw a copy of Slick Shot show off. So we'll see if we're going to go towards that. I believe if we're tapping the portal, we're probably going for Questing Druid, which, yeah, that is the case. And we'll see what, if any, follow up is there. Yeah, it's definitely a Slick
Hey,
Shot. I can't quite tell what the last card is.
yeah, just passing the turn back here. So, all right, it's open for Mario here to try to close it out. It's got the Tidebinder in hand. It's got a couple creatures in play. We'll see how they want to play it out from here, but looking pretty good to try to pick up a game. The first game, in fact, for his team. By the way, that Azorius and Waste Not matchup we were checked in on earlier. We thought might be over
Still
soon.
going.
Still going. Yeah.
I would have to imagine if we had like if we flashed over to that match, there would probably be about like 15 sharks or so in play. But
Yeah.
I guess if that's the case, then Hunter would be
It'll be
winning.
over soon, or it'll. Who knows? Who knows? But I do know that
Big attack here.
this one might be over soon as well because Mason is getting attacked by both of Mario's creatures. We'll see how combat progresses from here. First thing is priority gets passed, and this looks like a removal spell
Yeah, Witch
being
Stalker
pointed at the
Frenzy.
kite sail. Yeah,
Yeah, Frenzy is going to cost 2 mana because there are 2 creatures attacking. It's going to take out the Tidebinder. And it looks like Mario is going to Tidebinder the Questing Druid ability, which is pretty good. Turns it into a 1/1, doesn't get the counter and doesn't get future counters. So, pretty good setup here. Tidebinder looking really, really good in these games.
it's a fun card, isn't it?
So good.
Especially in these tempo. I loathe to use the word, but tempo-ish decks, right? This aggressive blue-green deck that can also mess with your opponent's game plan at the same time. The Larcenous, the Tidebinders, the hard-hitting
Wait, what just
questions when
happened?
you want those. A lot can go on. So okay, we'll
Okay.
see how this
We got a judge call. I'm not quite sure what the call is.
resolves here.
Yeah, 2 mana. I mean, we had 2 mana to cast the frenzy, and there were 2 creatures attacking. So I'm not quite sure what the question is. But
Yeah, we might
in any,
pop back over to that Pioneer match.
yeah, in any case, we can go back to Pioneer as expected. There's the Shark Typhoon still on the battlefield.
It's still 15-14 on life.
How has this happened?
Okay, so Narset's still in play. Wandering Emperor still in play. Very nice Hallowed Fountain in play.
Hmm.
Bunch of tokens. I mean, looking pretty good here for Hunter. Aaron looking through the hand and decides to scoop him up.
All
There
right.
we
Well, there
go.
we came back at the perfect time then, I guess.
3 games over to Hunter's team there. Hunter picking it up with Zori's control. Now his team up in every match. So backs up against the wall for Mario, Josh, and Aaron.
Now we get back to our regularly scheduled blasting, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see exactly what is going on here. I
Yeah, I
think.
wanted to call out if we're going to pop our head back into this match, the Nephalia Academy in the sideboard, where if a spell or ability your opponent controls causes you to discard, you can set it on top of your deck.
Hmm,
That's the tech that can come out. But we
love
also
it.
might we see these players deep in it. We might be able to pop back over to standard to get the
Yeah, I
game
think
going.
standards good to go. So there was a
Yeah,
bit of a judge call, not exactly sure what happened, but in any case, the frenzy did resolve to take care of the Tidebinder. And yeah, this is like a classic game of limited, just a lot of back and forth attacking and damage racing and all that stuff. And it looks like Mario is good to finally get their team on the board for a game win. Because like you said, it did not go very well for the first game, all the game ones on the other side.
right. Yeah, it's a lot of back and forth for us too. I had a real we're popping in and out of matches. NFL red zone
It's
moment
fun.
here. It felt
Oh
good.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm a big red zone guy. I see. I would rather watch red zone than like watch a single entire game. You know,
For the most part, that's how I am as well. I do a lot of fantasy, so that might explain it. But
same.
that yeah, it's an enjoyable way to watch it, and that's Kind of like what watching team trios is, just popping in and out of matches and different formats and different game states and coming into this slick shot show off being played out here by Mason.
Bang in the red zone. Taste it. Take one. What are you gonna do? Last card in hand, I believe, is a green card for Mason. Not sure what that could be. Take a look at Mason's deck list. Green cards. I'm scanning for green cards. Snakeskin Veil, Giant Growth, Pick Your Poison. That's really it. So could be a Questing Druid, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, so interesting state here. Mario trying to come up with 4 points of damage here. One blocker, just trying to finish it off.
Sentinel of the Nameless City. Gonna bring along with it a map token. We can map onto something here. Looks like we're going to map onto the flyer. Makes a lot of sense. Reveals a Gingerbread. Going to graveyard that. And get into the red zone. We'll see if we have anything for Mason. No, we don't. All right. Mario getting the first game win for our team of Mario, Joshua, and Aaron. And I believe we are ready to go back to the scheduled blasting as it attracts us in the battlefield. And
Look at
there's a
the
lot of
hand.
Emrakul's at hand for Joshua.
Look at
It's
the
not where you want
reveal.
those.
45, 57, 70, 80 mana worth in that hand.
75. They're all 15s, right?
Yeah, at least the Evercools are.
I think they're
The
all
worm, I
15s.
believe, is as well. So yeah, that's quite a bit.
90. The old 90 mana value.
Look at AJ's at 3 life.
That is true.
We've
We
got tokens.
can't get a look at the graveyard, but I don't know if there's a blast in the
That's a
graveyard.
Ramen app ruins in hand.
Ooh, how do we sneak in one more point of damage? Because you can't really attack it to the
The
Atraxa.
life link is going to change it
Yeah.
all. Otherwise, you could poke in for one and eat the block, but the life link changes it. Are there other deserts? There are, and that's why Ramen Ruins is so good. By the way, there's also this Discover land sitting
Okay,
on the
that's what that
battlefield.
is. I wasn't
So
sure what that was. So
yeah, that I can't tell. That might just be it. We don't know. Like one would assume, but he hasn't activated it yet. So here we go. Joshua Dickerson, a calibrated blast, trying to deal 3 more points to AJ Greenkey. I guess you could even let AJ gain 7 and even have a shot at this next turn for what it's worth. But we'll see how
so
Josh goes from here.
we're just coming into this game now. Taking a look at Hunter, or taking a look at AJ sideboard. Excuse me. There are two
Huh?
copies of Unmoored Ego. So if I had to guess what happened this game is that Joshua slammed Blast on turn 3, hit
Mm-hmm.
15. AJ went to 3, and then AJ resolved an Ego, and that's why we're not going for this Discover Land because we don't have Calibrated Blast left over. That's my
Okay.
guess, but
I'm with you. That checks out. In which case, this, well, hmm. Okay. So the life link again from the Eternity
oh,
and
you
the
see the Exile Zone? He just flashed the 4 blast. Okay, that's exactly what happened.
great
I
call.
still got it. I still got it.
Yeah. Detective Devin on the case.
All right, Spirit going back to the hand to Fairy. So with the Calibrated Blast out of the way, and this Atraxa coming in, and okay, I get it. If you could maybe chip in the last like 1 to 2 to 3 points of damage, but 10 is a tough sell.
Yeah, this is good. It's too bad that Ramen Ruins was probably likely one turn too late, right?
Yep.
So because he could have had AJ down to a virtual 1 life and just the life link from Atraxa making it too much. In all likelihood, there you go. That's a Gristle brand. That's a handshake. AJ Grinky picking up the first match for his team, taking down Joshua Dickerson's Calibrated Blast 2-0. That means that the other matches are going to decide who advances here in the top 8 of the NRG Team Trios Showdown in Indianapolis.
Yeah, that was a little unfortunate for the Calibrated Blast player because, the Calibrated Blast deck is good at casting Calibrated Blast, but after you get Unmoored Egoed, it's not the best at doing a lot else.
Yeah, it was very close. It was very close, but didn't quite get there. Fun to watch, though. That's for sure. All right, here we go. Back to standard Monastery Swiftspear and an attacking for Mason. Mario responding with a Siren and a map token out of Simic Cookies.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool one drops in the Simic deck. You have there's Ginger Brutes, Spyglass Sirens, and Teething Wormlets. So a lot of different ways to get on the battlefield very early, and just kind of put this is the equivalent of, I mean, Affinity, powerful
Mhm.
deck and putting a lot of permanents in the battlefield. This is sort of that same thing where it's not, the cards aren't as individually powerful as, say, your Rafines or your Shieldrids or any of these cards that are also legal and standard, but kind of, it's like a critical mass thing where you have a bunch of this stuff in the battlefield and you're using synergy a lot more than you're using just the raw power.
Yeah, definitely one of those things that comes about is having access to more cards in standard, right? And having the bigger rotation. Because getting the Zoetic card along with all these other random
Mm,
map token cards, it's really nice to be able to put that together in standard in a way that comes together. So here we go. The Siren though does bite the dust, and that is a
it's a
subterranean
boat.
schooner for Mario. That's a really fun card right there.
Oh yeah, we have a boat sighting. Maybe not as the big boat that people expect, but this is
Not
the
quite
boat
the
that we have
boat.
access
Yeah.
to. One of the boats. And we see we saw a fugitive codebreaker. Interesting turn that we didn't even discuss this, but fugitive codebreaker was cast on turn 2 for Mason, and we actually did offer the trade for the Siren.
Mhm.
That one, for folks at home, it's a 2/1 haste prowess, so we could have elected to not attack. Now it's possible that we didn't care about the trade because we had the second one lined up, so no harm, no foul. But yeah, interesting decision there for Mason last turn as we send in the clouds this turn. No available blockers here for Mario, and this is kind of what we talked about. This play draw matters
Yeah.
a ton, and Mario's definitely under the gun here.
Yeah, because the schooner, especially just sort of by the way vehicles work and the way it works specifically, triggering off an attack is very, very powerful. But really, when you're on the front foot, on the back foot, it's like fine, right? But it's a lot worse, and that leads to sometimes getting behind on board, as can be the case here. So we see, looks like a Kitesail Larcenist out of Mario to try to work his way back, and then we'll see if he opts to go for the attack with the schooner here or to keep everything back on defense.
Yeah, we talked about damage races. So the interesting thing about this turn is that you kind of want to attack with the schooner to be
Yeah,
able
'cause
to get the explore,
yeah,
but it's also a really good blocker. 3/4 is kind of a tough stat line for the red deck to be able to attack through. Now there are cards that can do it, right? You have Witchstalker Frenzy and Monstrous Rage are the two that come to mind. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and kite sail down the fugitive codebreaker, and
and the
yeah,
map
really.
token.
Oh, we can get a mana off that. That is a good point. Okay, so that can help us double spell. That's a good turn here for Mario. If
Yeah,
you have a one mana card.
especially depending on what we do with this here, because yeah, I mean, look, 15 life is, I mean, you don't want to be behind in the race, but it's not zero. It's not single digits. You can maybe take a hit, get a little aggressive with the schooner, and actually does use that mana to double spell, is able to play out, I think that's Ginger Brute,
Oh,
right?
get him in.
Swing in
Love
with
it.
that and the schooner, and now the schooner is going to have an explore trigger on the larcenist, and it looks like that's a non-land on top. Larcenist is going to have 4 toughness, also out of range of many, um, combinations out of the red deck. Big turn.
Yeah. On top of the fact the Larcenist has ward, right? So you already have to pay. I'm thinking of a card like Witchstalker Frenzy, where if you attack with the Swiss Spear, you normally be able to cast the Frenzy for 3 mana, but you got to be able to pay that ward cost in the Kite Sail as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
currently Mason, probably gonna not have access to that Fugitive Codebreaker for a while. And I believe Mason might have missed a land drop last turn as well. So maybe having some potential mana issues here. Grip full of spells, which, not the worst place to be in with a Swift Spear, but when you're facing down this much pressure, not exactly where you'd want to be. Wants to maybe follow up with like a Slick Shot plus something else. And I do see a Slick Shot in hand, but we'll have to see what that other else is. Pick your poison, I think, is the best option here for Mason if you have it.
yeah. Whoever spends the most mana tends to win the game, and in this case, Mario showed the power of that, really getting value out of just even that larcenous extra mana compared to Mason missing land drops here. She's not going to be able to cast enough spells, perhaps, to get in. So as it catches in that treasure token that the creature turned into, and is in fact able to double a spell here as a result with the show off and this saga. And in fact, it's in a pretty decent attack here. What's that? Probably for 5. So, all right, stuck on 2 lands. Mason's still working with what he's got. Gets in a hit. But here we go. Mario Torres, Sima Cookies player, is untapping with uh, access to 4 mana and some spells. So we'll see how he opts to go from here. But he's got a lot he can do.
Not just some spells, but pick your poison to be able to answer the show off and a tough cookie to be able to crew the schooner. This is going to
Yeah.
be a really big turn here for Mario. Now, 9 life still a little precarious. Does have to worry about something like, monstrous rage plus, dare I say it, giant growth. Is giant growth going to end this
you
game?
you may say it.
If that was still left in, we'll have to see. I mean, look, here's the thing. If you're playing a giant growth, you're not allowed to sideboard it out. You have to keep it in every matchup. I don't make up the rules.
That's true. You're right though. That was right there in the original rules of Magic. And Mario's thinking this one through, knows that he's in a good spot, knows that this is huge. Of course, AJ Grinke on this for Reanimator defeated Mario's teammate Joshua Dickerson on Calibrated Blast over in the modern seat, which means if Mason were to win this game with Gruul Aggro, the match would be over. Meanwhile, Hunter Crate is also up a game in the Pioneer seat. So this is a huge spot for Mario. And I'm not sure exactly what we're looking at here or what we're waiting on, but this is going to be probably the defining turn of this entire tournament for his team.
Yeah, the hand for Mario right now is just tough cookie in a land. So I think what we're deciding between is how aggressive do we want to get, and what combination of cards do we die to slash what combination of cards can we afford to play around. So that's kind of what is going through the head of Mario here. Now, you kind of we talked about the monstrous rage plus giant growth. Now, how much
Yeah,
damage is that? So the Swiss spear is 1 point plus the two prowess triggers, that would be three. The giant growth is three more, that's six, and then the monstrous rage is a plus three because it's two
great.
from itself plus the
Hmm.
the
The roll.
roll. So that would be 9 damage total with Mario at 9 life. So in that instance, if that was Mason's exact hand, he would have to hold back just one blocker, right? Any single point of toughness would do the trick, and looks like the tough cookie is holding back. So maybe that's exactly what is going through Mario's head.
Yeah, also had access to the ginger brute, so he definitely had a lot to think through there, right?
Yep.
Is going to go for the crew here in the attack and reveals a non-land on top that adds a counter. And you mentioned it keeps back the creature and is hoping that this will be enough. So Saga ticks up. What does Mason have here? Can Mason pull it out and send his team into the semifinals?
Yeah, Mason did pick up a mountain that turn. I think we're deploying another slick shot, which will get a counter from Kumano. So that is, if you're Mason, that is pretty good for you. But I didn't quite get a good look at what the leftovers were past the slick shot. Don't think I saw a monstrous rage or anything like that. So that's the card. If you're a Mason fan, you're really looking for monstrous rage here. I think it's double slick shot, Witch Stalker Frenzy, which that's kind of a tough hand.
That's not exactly where you want to be at all in this spot. Mario might be just a few moments away from this as Mason tries to find a way out. Thinking about it, and the first spell is going to come down, probably be a show off, and we'll go from there. But this has been a really back and forth match between two aggro decks of sort of very different varieties, which is fun to watch.
Yeah, the other question is here, can Mario actually present lethal next turn, especially through that Witchstalker Frenzy?
Mhm.
I'm going to assume the answer is no, because you figure Mason's at 10. Even just on the board, we know the cookie's on top. That gets cast, cruise the schooner. That's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But through the removal spell can take care of one of the creatures. So it is entirely possible that Mario goes for it, like, plays the cookie,
Yeah.
sends in the clowns, gets frenzied, and then could potentially land the backswing. So this is gonna be a really interesting turn to see. Does Mario play around a removal spell? Can he afford to play around a removal spell? Exactly what is going on. I guess you can also, so instead of playing the cookie from hand, you can activate the cookie in play to make the
Like
food
a
into a
4/4.
4/4, and then use the cookie to crew the schooner. But then even in that instance, it's
It's not
still,
counting up to lethal.
even without the frenzy, because the Swiss Beer can now is left on defense. So the Swiss Beer can chump block the 4/4, and then you would be taking 3, 6, 7,
Yeah.
8 damage, but
So
Mason's at 10. So
so another line here then is that there are actual food tokens. That is life gain for
yes,
Mario.
yeah.
And the schooner is the biggest thing on board this game. Maybe if you're Mario, you can opt to play this game with an eye towards playing 2 more turns, with the intent of gaining 3 to 6 life over the course of those turns. Now you know that Mason has unlocked some things likely with that third land, is about to flip over the saga into another creature, has cards in hand. So that kind of strategy can be risky, but yeah, there's a lot going on here for Mario. That's for sure. I think you said it's something about limited earlier. That sure looks like a great
Oh
game of
yeah,
limited right here. No creature has more than what three, 3 or 4 power and toughness.
we call this a pure damage race.
Yeah, it's fun.
This is kind of why I like standard because I feel like the other formats have gotten so powerful to the point where we just don't see this type of gameplay anymore, right?
Yeah,
It's a
rarely.
lot more about these kind of linear interactions and less about actually playing to the battlefield in this sort of way.
Mhm.
And it's really refreshing because I don't know about you, but I really enjoy games like this where it's like, what do I have to attack with? What do I have to hold back? What can I afford to play around? Do I have to hope my opponent has nothing? There's just so many things to think about in these spots.
Yeah, I'm a big limited purist myself, so I very much enjoy the questions that this sort of thing poses, right? And where it comes down to sort of who can grind it out the best. So here we go. Mario has made a decision. The tough cookie hits the battlefield. We've got another food token, so could sacrifice a food token to gain some life. We're going to crew the schooner, send it in.
Ooh, I like this. Okay, just attacking with the schooner. So we're playing just about as defensively as possible. We're even holding back the kite sail to check the slick shot show off. Oh, and you know what I love about this play too?
Mhm.
It also means that you're only attacking with one creature, which the red deck has four
Right,
frenzies, and
right.
you're just not playing into frenzy at this point.
Yeah, and you know that Mason's been short on lands the entire game. And now you've
Yep.
got, in theory, plenty of blockers here. You've got mana
Oh
open to
my
get
god.
food. So what is this?
Corbidy Truth the Giant Growth.
Okay. All right, let's go.
And this is Ancestral Anger on Slick Shot. So I'm going to do some quick math here. So the
Yeah.
Slick Shot is a 2/3. It gets +1 power from the anger and 2 power from its own ability, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Plus
2
3.
plus 3 is 6. The Giant Growth is 3, 5 more. That's 11. And then you have 11 minus.
Oh gosh.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
that should be enough. So Mason is spending 2 mana on the frenzy, but that's one. The frenzy costs 1 plus the ward, so that's the 2 mana covered. And that Carplusen Forest is going to represent Giant Growth, and I think this is going to be a lethal attack with Giant Growth.
Wow.
You love to see it.
Wow, you sure do, man. Giant growth winning games, 1994, 2024. Magic is amazing. And what a play by Mason. What an ending if he's able to finish this off. If the map holds up, if Mario we know he's got nothing. Does Mason pull the
This
trigger
Giant
here?
Growth. This
Yeah, we
Giant
do.
Growth. Dude.
Ah, yeah. Giant growth fist bump.
Oh
Good
my
game.
god!
Mason. Who's
Wow.
takes it down? Gruel aggro. What a win. What an ending. Giant growth winning the game. You called it out before the match started. What a caster call right there, Devin. What
Giant
a match.
growth. I mean, I gotta be honest. I did not think I would see giant growth in the year of our Lord and Savior 2024, but here we are. Giant growth winning games of Magic, and I got one copy right here. Don't ask me
Oh,
why I have
heck
one, but
yeah.
I have one. I was just sitting on my desk. Yeah, no, really, congratulations. That was amazing to watch, and you don't get to see giant growth cast every day. And it was a true game of limited that was
Hmm.
decided by
Yeah.
one of limited's oldest tricks, right?
Yeah, that's right. And all 3 games in that match were tight. Great match to open the quarterfinals here at the NRG Championship Series 10K. This is Team Trios. I'm Corbin Hosser with Devin O'Donnell. We will be heading into the semifinals first, but next. But first, we want to look at everything coming up in the future here on the NRG Series. First up is St. Louis. This is coming up on June 22nd and the 23rd. There is a 10K Modern Showdown and a 5K Pioneer Trial on Saturday and Sunday. And of course, side events, Ultimate Guard providing prizes and support to those side events as well as the main event. So definitely a lot to play for in St. Louis. And you can get points for the season long leaderboard and all of that comes with it, as well as the events that come up in the back half of the year in season 2. That begins July 13th to 14th in Chicagoland, where we'll be playing Modern and Legacy. Heading after that to Madison for Modern and Teen Trios again on August 24th, 25th. September 14th and 15th, we will be going to Louisville for a 10K Modern Showdown and a 5K Modern Trial. I'm sorry, Standard Trial. And wrapping up Season two's events this year in Indianapolis again, November 2nd to the 3rd, with a $10,000 Modern Showdown and a $5,000 Pioneer Showdown. That is a lot to play for over the course of the year with these series. We've already had a handful of events this year. We've got the leaderboard building up towards the championship series at the end of the year. A ton going on in this.
Yeah, and the most importantly, we have giant growths, and hopefully, we will have
That's
more
right.
giant growths for all of you when we have our next match, which should be just around the corner. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a little bit.